boxing.
Alright, welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone is doing okay. This video is about the film study between Tyson Fury and Olexsander Usyk. Should we get that incredible fight for the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship of the world? It's in talks right now. I know there's been a lot of back and forth, especially with Fury and all the demands and stuff like this, but I want to talk about the potential fight and, you know, highlight some key glaring factors that I think will play a part in this fight. And because a couple of days ago, shout out to Hatman and shout out to Chris, I forgot your last name, he's got a channel called Fight Sports Talk. I'll leave the link below, because he posted, we were just chatting and he posted, you know, something about Usyk having his way with Fury quite easily. And I was like, my first reaction was, what? Like, Fury's length and size be way too much. And I hadn't, in all fairness, done any film study really, or remembered, you know, older fights. And Hatman came in and was like, you should go and watch some video, bro. And I did. And obviously, look, Fury has openly said on Joe Rogan's podcast that Steve Cunningham was his toughest fight. You know, he couldn't pin him down. He called him a slippery eel with oil on, or something like that. And he had a hard time, and he had to revert to mauling Cunningham, the smaller guy. And you know, obviously he struggled with Wallin, who's a southpaw, and you know, he looked a bit unprepared for both of those fights, but nonetheless they were definitely, you know, struggles. And like he said, the Cunningham was his toughest fight. So I have changed my opinion, and I think his fight with Usyk would be incredibly tough, and he would have to maul Usyk for sure. I've completely changed my opinion, and I'm glad to do that, and I appreciate the guidance, because, you know, like once you see, and I'm going to show some stuff on the film study right now. Basically, okay, number one, this is against Wallin. Okay, so Wallin is a southpaw. He is quite tall, 6'6". But he was coming at Fury, and you know, Fury was trying to box with him. But when you have an up jab, right, which Fury does, he's got a very loose up jab. It comes from down here, and you know, Wallin had his hands up like that. You're shooting an up jab straight into their arm, into their lead hand. Okay, so all they've got to do is parry it down. He was having a hard time landing that jab. Okay, he was, not to say he wasn't landing it at all, but he was struggling with it because of the trajectory. Okay. And if you watch fighters that fight southpaws, like your Floyds and Devin Haney's, okay, you see that they'll usually like probe with it and then shoot the right hand. Now you might be thinking, why am I talking about Floyd Mayweather and Devin Haney? But it's a strategy, it's a tactic for boxing southpaws. There's ways to box them, and if you have a certain style, some punches aren't as good, and an up jab is a terrible punch against a southpaw because of the angle you're coming up on. You're making it easier for them to parry it down. Fury's right hand can be sloppy sometimes, okay? It can be good, but in order to counteract that, you would need to probe and then shoot a very quick, straight, technically, you know, good straight right hand, a southpaw killer. And you know, Fury sometimes can do it and sometimes not. And when you're like giving somebody like Usyk a tail, all right, a tail meaning, like, you know, you might move your wrist back a little bit and then punch. He's going to see that. He saw it in the AJ fight, and he was countering AJ. AJ moved his hand a little bit. Usyk come in, boom, shot him with a jab. So I think, you know, if Fury did try to box and just let Usyk prance around in that mid-range, I think that could be a long night. I really do, because Usyk, you know, would be able to maneuver. His feet would be quicker and his thought process would be quicker. Or, you know, given Fury's sloppy punches sometimes, he'd have to keep his technique up all the time, especially with that right hand. And as I mentioned, the jab would be not a key punch in this. Now, so the question is, obviously, he would try to maul Usyk, we think. How would he maul Usyk, and would he be able to do it for 12 rounds, or would he be able to do it successful enough? Because I think Usyk, coming off the 3 fights he's had, especially with Chisora and AJ2, there were moments in that where he's had experience of people try to do that to him. So this was a good test, or good experience, good learning fights for that. There were definitely times where AJ was bullying him, and, you know, Usyk already in those fights showed some ring craft. Where he was getting backed up on the ropes and he turned AJ, got the real estate, was back up into control, but, you know, he didn't get caught up in the wrestling match. Boxing. Because you know Fury's going to try to lean on him and bully him and hit him in the head, and you know, AJ tried to do that as well. But, you know, I think that's the question for me, is what would Usyk do once he's getting mauled? Because he's too intelligent to stick around there, and he's too quick and slippery, you know. Well, is he? We'll have to find out. Hopefully we see the fight, because, you know, there's Jared Anderson, trained with Fury, sparred with Fury, was backing Fury and suggesting that it would be no problem. But, you know, sparring partners, you know, they often have a good camaraderie. You know, they're in camp with them for weeks and stuff like that. So they're not just they're brought in and then just shoved off to some room. No, they're hanging out, and it's usually a good spirited camaraderie, usually. So I doubt he's going to go against him. You know, they probably know the Fury team well, stuff like that. But, you know, he seemed to think Fury would deal with Usyk no problem, saying he was a different fighter from 10 years ago, which obviously he is. He's a much better fighter, and he's learned a lot. But would he still struggle with that specific style? I think the answer is yes. And you know, it's just an intriguing matchup for me, because, you know, the Wallin came in with a game plan, okay? Very, very determined. And, you know, Fury looked a little bit off the pace early, and he just didn't seem as motivated. You know, I think we know that. And even for the Cunningham fight, he just seemed a bit off. I know Peter Fury wasn't in the corner. He was fighting with a lot of bravado, a lot of, you know, very cavalier. He got dropped, actually. It was almost like he was making, like, it was like from a rhythm step, really. Like when he was like hands down, he was trying to back Cunningham up on the ropes, and then he came out almost rhythm stepping. Which is a rhythm step. And shout out to I think Barry Robinson, I think is his name, Coach Robinson. He's got a great YouTube channel. He talks about this, and Boxing Gems talks about this too. The rhythm step is basically a movement that a boxer makes which hinders them, but they don't really know they're doing it. It's like a subconscious movement that is not advantageous to them at all. It can bring your feet together, it can bring your feet far apart. And in those moments, in that short time where your feet are planted and you can't really punch or defend a punch, that's when, you know, if the film study's done on you, that's when fighters can capitalize, okay? And, you know, it looked like Fury was just coming out of a rhythm step, and, you know, would he do that more? I'd have to look at more tape, to be honest. This is like an earlier film study, and, you know, should the fight get made, I'll obviously do a couple more videos, but I just wanted to elaborate on, you know, what might happen in this tremendous fight, because you do think Usyk would be able to outbox Fury based on what I've said. The jab is, you know, his sharpness. Fury would have to keep an extremely like quick, sharp right hand. You know, the Usyk's movement, you would think it's better than Cunningham's. You would think he's smarter than Otto Wallin. I mean, he's a special fighter, so he'd probably be able, he's like, well, look, he's Wallin and Cunningham. You put them together, there's some version of Usyk there, not at all really. I'm not saying they fight similar really. I'm just saying southpaw, quick on his feet, boxer. There's some elements there, and Usyk's a better version of both of them, obviously. But I'm just saying, if those two can and this is, you know, shout out to Hatman again, because he certainly opened my eyes to this. But I think Fury would have to maul Usyk, and it's like, I think also, you know, Fury, if he's gonna maul Usyk, I think he would have to come in like he came in the Wilder 2 fight. Okay, that's the best shape I think I've seen him in physically, mentally, perhaps than the Klitschko fight. But you know, he came in, his physique was different. He was way lighter for the Klitschko fight, but for the Wilder 2 fight, he was dialed in. He was mentally in it, and he was strong, you know. And I think you know, if he was going to really maul Usyk and win that fight, I think he needs a training camp like the Wilder 2 one, personally, just because he was just so switched on. And you know, you would think the Undisputed fight, his last probably ever fight, if it were to happen, you think he put in one hell of a training camp. And another thing I want to touch on, actually, which I found, you know, quite interesting when I thought about this, is like, you know, over the lifetime of when these fighters and boxers put their dedication to the sport, okay, and you see how committed Usyk is in and outside of the ring, I think that would play a role in that fight as well. Just the wear and tear on Fury's body, how he's treated his body, and it's not I'm not having a go. His story is amazing, it's fantastic, but we all know about the heavyweight gain, alcohol, drug abuse. You know, that will show up now. That's going to show up it's showing up a little bit like now. And Usyk, not so much. So if they were to fight 6 months to a year, I think because of the way Usyk has treated the sport, the spirit he's given to it, the commitment he has in and out the ring, I think, you know, that will play a part in the fight. It has to. I'm not saying like, I'm just overall, if you see where I'm coming from, I think, you know, that will serve him well, you know. And you know, I just hope we get the fight. Now, I didn't really go into it too much after the AJ Usyk fight about the Undisputed, because I don't want to get my hopes up too much, even though I'm doing a film study video now. But I just, you know, it's a shame when we got these big fights on the like, you know, on the edge, and we have our doubts, you know. It's a shame as boxing fans. But anyway, look, that's it from me. I'd love to know your thoughts. Do you think Fury could just completely outbox Usyk, keep it long? Another thing I wanted to say, actually, one of the reasons why I thought Fury could keep it long was his ability to use head control, which at times he could do with Wallin, and at times he couldn't. And that's the slipperiness, you know. If you've got head movement, you can slip or slide underneath like Usyk can. He's harder to control with that long arm and that long guard. So I never really gave that much thought, but that was one of the reasons I thought, you know, Fury might be able to do that. But changed my mind, and you know, I would just love to see the fight. But yeah, let me know what you think. Do you think Usyk would slip and slide and, like, you know, light up that body? There'll be a lot of room under there, you know. There'll be a lot of room under there. That's a good 5 or 6 inches height difference. You know, Usyk will be able to get in there. He did it against AJ. He can slide punches and come underneath, no problem. Anyway, I'm rambling a little bit. That's it from me, Boxing on the Edge. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you soon. Have a great week.